I lied to my wife about being a millionaire for 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days. I know the exact count because I kept a journal hidden in my office desk drawer, marking each day like a prisoner counting down a sentence. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't counting down to freedom. I was counting down to the moment my entire world would collapse. It started innocently enough, the way most disasters do. Sarah and I had been dating for 8 months when she mentioned offhandedly that her previous boyfriend had been financially stable. Her delicate way of saying he had money. We were sitting in my beat-up Honda Civic at the time, sharing a bag of McDonald's fries because that's all I could afford after paying rent on my studio apartment. The comment stung more than it should have, probably because I was already falling in love with her and terrified she'd leave me for someone who could actually take her to nice restaurants. "I'm doing pretty well myself," I heard myself saying, "just waiting for some investments to mature." It was technically true. I had $347 in a savings account that was technically an investment in my future financial stability, even if that future seemed impossibly distant. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand, and something in her eyes shifted, a kind of relief maybe, or excitement. That's when I should have stopped. That's when I should have told her the truth about my $28,000 salary at the insurance company, about the ramen noodles I ate for dinner 4 nights a week, about how I'd been wearing the same 3 dress shirts to work for 2 years. Instead, I doubled down. "Actually, I crossed the $1 million mark last year," I said, surprised by how easily the words came out. "Real estate investments, mostly, and some tech stocks that really paid off." Sarah's entire face lit up. She looked at me like I was someone worth looking at, someone worth being with. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. So I kept talking, weaving an elaborate fiction about my portfolio, my financial advisor, my modest lifestyle, because I preferred to live below my means. With each lie, Sarah fell a little deeper in love with the man I was pretending to be. The proposal happened 6 months later. I'd been living off credit cards for weeks, maintaining the illusion that money was no object while my bank account hovered dangerously close to zero. But I managed to scrape together enough for a decent ring, well, decent enough that Sarah cried when she saw it. She said yes immediately, and as she threw her arms around my neck, I felt the full weight of what I'd done settling over me like a lead blanket. "We can have the wedding of our dreams," she whispered into my ear. "We can finally start our real life together." I should have confessed then, should have held her face in my hands and told her everything, that I loved her more than I'd ever loved anything, that I was terrified of losing her, that every single thing I'd told her about my financial situation was a carefully constructed lie. Instead, I smiled and held her tighter, already calculating how I could possibly pay for the kind of wedding she was envisioning. The next 3 years were a masterclass in elaborate deception. I became a magician, pulling rabbits out of hats that didn't exist. When Sarah wanted to look at houses, I told her I was waiting for the perfect investment property to come along. When she suggested we take a vacation to Europe, I explained that I had most of my money tied up in long-term investments and didn't want to liquidate them during a market downturn. I became fluent in financial jargon, spending hours on investment websites and forums, learning enough to sound credible when she asked about my portfolio. The wedding nearly broke me, financially and emotionally. Sarah's parents offered to pay, but I insisted the wealthy husband had to provide. I maxed out every credit card I could get my hands on, took out a personal loan with a horrifying interest rate, and even borrowed money from my own parents under the pretense of a temporary cash flow issue. The day of our wedding, as I watched Sarah walking down the aisle in her dream dress toward her dream future, I felt like I was watching my own execution. But somehow I kept the charade going. I got better at it, actually. I learned to pay the minimum on credit cards while rotating the debt to new cards with promotional rates. I picked up freelance work on weekends, telling Sarah I was consulting for other investors. I moved us into a nicer apartment that I could barely afford, explaining that I preferred to rent while I looked for the right property to buy. Every month, I performed an increasingly complex financial ballet, moving money around like a shell game where I was both the operator and the mark. The stress was killing me. I developed insomnia, then anxiety attacks, then a persistent tremor in my left hand that I told Sarah was from too much coffee. I lost 20 pounds and told her I was on a health kick. When she suggested we see a financial planner to discuss our future, I told her I preferred to manage our investments personally. When her father offered me a job at his law firm, a job that would have actually paid enough to support the lifestyle I was pretending to live, I declined, claiming I didn't want to mix family with business. Sarah never suspected. Why would she? I'd proven myself to be a convincing liar, and she had no reason to doubt the man she'd married. She talked excitedly about the house we'd buy, the children we'd have, the trips we'd take. She'd show me real estate listings for $1 million homes, and I'd nod thoughtfully while my stomach churned with the knowledge that I couldn't afford the security deposit on a studio apartment. The irony was that Sarah would have loved me anyway. I knew this deep down, but I couldn't bring myself to test it. She'd fallen in love with James, the millionaire investor. How could I ask her to love Jim, the guy who ate cereal for dinner and hadn't been to a dentist in 3 years? The man she'd married was confident, successful, secure. The man she'd actually married was drowning in debt and lying to her every single day. Year 3 was when things started to unravel. Sarah began pushing harder about buying a house, about starting a family, about making concrete plans for our future. She'd done well in her marketing job and had saved up what she thought would be a down payment, assuming I'd match it with ease for my mysterious millions. She couldn't understand my hesitation, my constant delays, my increasingly creative excuses. "Sometimes I feel like you don't want the same things I want," she said one night after I'd deflected another conversation about house hunting. We were sitting on the couch in our overpriced apartment, the television casting blue shadows across her disappointed face. "That's not true," I said, which was both a lie and the truth. I wanted everything she wanted, I just had no way to provide it. Then what are we waiting for? We have the money, we have stable jobs, we've been married for 2 years. What's holding us back? I wanted to tell her that what was holding us back was my complete inability to function as an adult human being, my paralyzing fear of disappointing her, my growing mountain of debt that kept me awake at 3 a.m. doing math on the back of envelopes. Instead, I talked about market volatility and the importance of timing in real estate investments. She studied my face for a long moment, and for the first time since we'd met, I saw doubt creep into her eyes. "Jim," she said quietly, "is there something you're not telling me?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire I'd been pretending wasn't burning down our house. This was it. This was the moment I could come clean, throw myself on her mercy, beg her forgiveness, and hope that the woman I'd fallen in love with was the same woman who'd fallen in love with what she thought was the real me. "No," I said. "Everything's fine. We just need to be patient." The doubt in her eyes deepened, but she didn't push. Not then. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday. Sarah had been quiet for days, distracted in a way that made my anxiety spike even higher than usual. I'd catch her staring at me over breakfast with an expression I couldn't read, and when I asked what was wrong, she'd just shake her head and say she was tired. I was at work, hunched over my computer and trying to concentrate on insurance claims while mentally juggling our household budget, when my phone rang. Sarah's name on the caller ID made my heart skip. She never called during work hours unless something was wrong. "Jim?" Her voice sounded strange, careful. "Can you come home? We need to talk." 5 words that struck terror into every married person's heart. I tried to keep my voice steady as I told her I'd be right there, but my hands were shaking as I packed up my desk. During the 20-minute drive home, I ran through every possible scenario. Had she found the credit card statements I'd been hiding? Had one of my creditors called the apartment? Had she somehow discovered the gap between my actual salary and the lifestyle we were living? Sarah was sitting at our kitchen table when I walked in, a manila folder spread open in front of her. My blood turned to ice water when I saw what was inside. Bank statements, credit reports, loan documents, every piece of financial documentation I'd been desperately trying to keep hidden, laid out like evidence at a crime scene. "Sit down," she said without looking up. I sat. The folder between us might as well have been a chasm. "I hired a private investigator," she said, her voice completely devoid of emotion. "I know that sounds crazy, but I had to know. You've been acting so strange about money, so secretive, and I thought maybe you were having an affair." An affair. Jesus, if only it had been that simple. Instead, she continued, finally looking up at me with eyes that held no warmth, no recognition, nothing at all, I found out that my husband doesn't exist. She slid a document across the table. My real financial statement showing a net worth of negative $127,000. Every debt, every maxed out credit card, every late payment and penalty fee laid out in merciless black and white. According to this, Sarah's voice was getting quieter with each word, which somehow made it more terrifying than if she'd been screaming, "You make $28,000 a year. You have no investments. You have no savings. You have debt that would take you decades to pay off, assuming you could even make the minimum payments, which according to these credit reports, you frequently can't." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. What could I possibly say that would make any of this better? "Were you ever going to tell me?" she asked. "Were you planning to keep lying to me for our entire marriage? Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what?" For the first time, her voice cracked. "Explain how you've been lying to me about everything for 4 years? Explain how you let me plan a future that was never going to happen? Explain how you watched me save money for a house down payment while you were drowning in debt?" I tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away like my touch burned her. "I love you," I said, and it was the first completely true thing I'd said to her in years. "I love you so much that I was terrified you'd leave me if you knew the truth." "The truth?" Sarah's laugh was bitter and sharp. "I don't even know what that means anymore. Is your name really Jim? Do you actually work in insurance? How do I know anything you've ever told me is real?" "Everything else is real," I said desperately. "My feelings for you, how much I love you, how much I want to build a life with you, all of that is real. But it's not, though, is it?" She was crying now, tears streaming down her face while her voice remained eerily calm. "Because the life you want to build with me is based on a lie. The man I fell in love with was a lie. Our entire relationship is a lie. She was right, and we both knew it. I had stolen 4 years of her life, 4 years she could have spent with someone who actually existed. I had proposed to her under false pretenses, married her while pretending to be someone else entirely, and let her make plans for a future that was financially impossible. "I can fix this," I said, though I had no idea how. "I can get a better job, I can pay off the debt, I can—" "With what?" Sarah's voice was sharp again. "You're 42 years old, Jim. You've been working the same dead-end job for 8 years. You have no marketable skills, no education beyond high school, and debt that's more than 4 times your annual salary. Even if you tripled your income tomorrow, which we both know isn't going to happen, it would take you 20 years to dig out of this hole." She was right again. She was right about everything, and her rightness was like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. "I never meant for it to go this far," I said weakly. "It started small, just a little exaggeration, and then I couldn't figure out how to take it back." "You couldn't figure out how to take it back?" Sarah's voice rose for the first time, anger finally breaking through her controlled facade. "You had hundreds of opportunities to tell me the truth. Before we got engaged, before we planned our wedding, before we got married, before we signed a lease on this apartment we can't afford. You had so many chances to be honest with me." She was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I wanted to comfort her, but I was the source of her pain. I had done this to her. I had taken the woman I loved more than anything in the world and broken her heart as completely as it was possible for a heart to be broken. "Get out," she said through her tears. "I can't look at you right now. I can't be in the same room as you. Sarah, please, get out," she screamed, and I'd never heard her scream before, not once in all the time we'd known each other. "Get out, get out, get out." I left. What else could I do? I packed a bag while she locked herself in the bedroom, and I left my wife alone in the apartment we couldn't afford, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal. I spent that night in my car in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, running the heat every few hours to keep from freezing. I kept picking up my phone to call Sarah, then putting it down again. What could I possibly say? How do you apologize for stealing someone's entire adult life? When I finally worked up the courage to go back to the apartment the next evening, Sarah was gone. She'd taken her clothes, her books, her grandmother's jewelry, everything that was truly hers. She'd left behind all the furniture we'd bought together, all the wedding gifts, all the physical evidence of our life together. On the kitchen table, where the folder of financial documents had been the day before, she'd left a single sheet of paper. "Jim," it read in her careful handwriting, "I need time to think. I'm staying with my sister. Don't call me, don't come looking for me. When I'm ready to talk, I'll contact you. I need you to respect that." At the bottom, she'd written something that made my knees buckle. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if I want to try." She didn't sign it. She didn't say she loved me. She didn't leave any hint about what came next. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and panic attacks. I couldn't afford the apartment by myself, so I had to break the lease and move back in with my parents at age 42, the ultimate symbol of my complete failure as an adult. My mother, bless her heart, tried to be supportive, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. My father just shook his head and muttered about lying to your wife, and what did you expect? I told my parents a simplified version of the story, that I'd gotten into debt and Sarah had left me. They didn't need to know about the elaborate fiction I'd constructed, about the years of daily deception. They didn't need to know just how completely I'd destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to me. Work became unbearable. I'd sit at my desk processing insurance claims while my mind replayed every conversation I'd had with Sarah, every lie I'd told, every moment I could have chosen honesty instead of deception. My colleagues noticed my distraction, my weight loss, my obvious misery, but I couldn't explain what was wrong without admitting what I'd done. After a month of silence, Sarah finally called. Hearing her voice on the phone made me cry, which I hadn't done since I was a child. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble, "about us, about what happened, about what comes next." I held my breath. I want to understand, she continued. I need to understand how this happened, how you could lie to me every day for years and act like it was normal. So I'm willing to talk, but only with a counselor. Couples therapy. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a chance. I would have agreed to anything. Dr. Rebecca Martinez was a small woman with kind eyes and an unsettling ability to see right through whatever story you were trying to tell. Her office was warm and comfortable, filled with soft furniture and tissues strategically placed on every surface. Sarah and I sat on opposite ends of a couch that might as well have been a football field, neither of us looking at the other. Why don't we start with you telling me what brought you here? Dr. Martinez said, looking at Sarah. Sarah's version of the story was clinical, precise, devastating. She laid out the facts of my deception with the thoroughness of a prosecutor building a case. When she was finished, Dr. Martinez turned to me. And your perspective, Jim? Where could I even begin? How do you explain 4 years of daily lies to someone whose job is to help people tell the truth to each other? I was afraid, I said finally. I was afraid she'd leave me if she knew who I really was. And who are you, really? Dr. Martinez asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. Who was I, really? I'd been pretending to be someone else for so long that I wasn't sure I remembered. I'm nobody, I said. I'm a 42-year-old man who makes $28,000 a year and lives with his parents. I'm not successful, I'm not impressive, I'm not worth staying with. Do you think that's how Sarah saw you when you first met? Dr. Martinez asked. I looked at Sarah for the first time since we'd sat down. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Tell him, Dr. Martinez said gently to Sarah. Tell him what you saw when you first met him. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at me directly for the first time in weeks. I saw someone who made me laugh, she said quietly. Someone who remembered that I liked extra pickles on my burgers and who always let me pick the movie. Someone who listened when I talked about work, who held my hand during scary parts of movies, who made me feel safe. She paused, struggling with her words. I didn't fall in love with your bank account, Jim. I fell in love with you, the you that you apparently thought wasn't good enough. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. All those years of lying, all that elaborate deception, all that anxiety and fear, and she'd already loved me exactly as I was. But then you told me about the money, Sarah continued, and I got excited about the things we could do together, the life we could build. But it wasn't the money itself. It was the possibilities, the security, the feeling that we were a team who could handle whatever came our way. She started crying harder. And now I find out that not only was the security fake, but I can't trust anything you tell me. How do I build a life with someone who lies to me every single day? How do I make plans with someone who lets me believe in a future that's impossible? Dr. Martinez let us sit with that question for a long moment. Jim, she said finally, what would you want to say to Sarah right now? I looked at my wife, my beautiful, kind, trusting wife who deserved so much better than what I'd given her. And for the first time in years, I told her the complete truth. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I stole 4 years of your life. I'm sorry I made you fall in love with someone who didn't exist. I'm sorry I let you make plans for a future I knew was impossible. I'm sorry I was such a coward that I chose to lie to you every day rather than risk losing you by being honest. I took a shaky breath. But mostly, I'm sorry that I robbed us of the chance to build something real. Because you're right, you did love me before you knew about the money. And if I'd been brave enough to trust that love, we might have built something smaller than what you dreamed of. But it would have been real. It would have been based on truth. Sarah was sobbing openly now. I don't know how to forgive you, she said. I don't know how to trust you again. Every time I think about our wedding day, I remember that you were lying to me while you said your vows. Every time I think about the nights we spent planning our future, I remember that you knew it was all fake. How do I get past that? I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you should. Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. What would you need, Sarah, to even consider trying to rebuild trust? Sarah was quiet for a long time, thinking. Complete honesty, she said finally, about everything. Your finances, your job, your debts, your fears, everything. No more secrets, no more half-truths, no more protecting me from reality. She looked at me directly. And I need to see that you're taking responsibility for fixing the mess you've made. I need to see a real plan for dealing with your debt, for improving your situation, for becoming the kind of person who can actually be a partner instead of a liability. It was a tall order, but it was fair, more than fair. And, Sarah continued, I need to know why. I need to understand how someone I thought I knew could lie to me every single day and feel okay about it, because right now I feel like I was married to a stranger. That was the hardest part. Explaining the psychology of deception, the way small lies grow into bigger ones, the paralyzing fear that had driven me to choose dishonesty over vulnerability. Over the course of many therapy sessions, I had to confront some ugly truths about myself, that I was a people pleaser who would rather lie than disappoint, that I had such low self-esteem that I couldn't believe anyone could love me as I actually was, that I was so conflict avoidant that I'd chosen years of anxiety over one difficult conversation. Sarah listened to all of it, asked hard questions, called me out when I tried to minimize or justify my behavior. Slowly, painfully, we began to excavate the real person underneath all the lies, and it turned out that person wasn't nearly as unlovable as I'd feared. The financial reality was grim. Even with Sarah's income, we were looking at years of careful budgeting and debt repayment. The house she'd dreamed of was off the table indefinitely. The European vacation would have to wait. The comfortable middle-class life we'd both envisioned was going to be a struggle to achieve. But something unexpected happened as we laid out all the ugly facts. Sarah didn't run. She didn't leave. She looked at the numbers, really looked at them, and then she looked at me. "Okay," she said. "This is what we're working with. How do we fix it?" We. Even after everything I'd done, she was still thinking in terms of we. It wasn't easy. Nothing about the next few years was easy. Sarah moved back in with me at my parents' house while we aggressively paid down debt and saved for a security deposit on a modest apartment. I got a second job delivering pizza on weekends. Sarah picked up freelance projects. We sold our wedding gifts, our furniture, anything we could live without. We ate a lot of ramen and watched a lot of Netflix instead of going out. Some days Sarah would look at me and I could see the doubt creeping back in. Some days I would catch myself about to embellish a story or downplay a problem, and I'd have to stop myself and choose honesty, even when it was harder. We went to therapy every week for 2 years, working through trust issues and communication problems, and the basic question of whether our marriage could survive what I'd done to it. The turning point came on a random Tuesday evening 2 years after the initial confrontation. We were sitting in our tiny one-bedroom apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and working on our budget for the month. Sarah had a spreadsheet open on her laptop, tracking our progress on debt repayment, and I was going through the stack of bills. "We're actually going to make it," she said suddenly, looking up from her computer. "Look at this. If we stick to the plan, we'll be debt-free in 3 more years, and then we can start saving for a house." She sounded surprised, almost amazed, like she'd been going through the motions of building a future with me, but hadn't quite believed it would actually work. "You sound shocked," I said, trying to make a joke of it. Sarah looked at me seriously. "I am a little. 6 months ago, I wasn't sure we'd make it to the end of the year." She closed the laptop and moved closer to me on our second-hand couch. "But I'm proud of us," she said. "I'm proud of how hard we've worked, how honest we've been with each other. I'm proud that we didn't give up." It was the first time since everything had blown up that she'd said she was proud of me. The first time she'd talked about us as a team again. "I love you," I said, and it was still the truest thing I knew how to say. "I love you too," she said back. "The real you. The one who eats cereal for dinner and worries about money and tries so hard to make me happy. I love that guy." We kissed on our ugly couch in our tiny apartment with a stack of bills on the coffee table, and it was the most honest moment we'd ever shared. 5 years later, we bought our first house. It wasn't the house Sarah had originally dreamed of. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but solid and ours. The day we got the keys, we stood in the empty living room and held each other, both of us crying a little. "We did it," Sarah whispered. "We actually did it." And we had. We'd taken the wreckage of my lies and built something real from the pieces. It wasn't the life either of us had originally planned, but it was better because it was true. I still think about those 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days sometimes. I think about how different our lives might have been if I'd chosen honesty from the beginning, if I'd trusted Sarah's love enough to be vulnerable with her. I think about all the anxiety and fear I could have avoided, all the sleep I could have gotten, all the real conversations we could have had, instead of the elaborate performances I put on every day. But I've learned something important. The truth, even when it's ugly and disappointing and embarrassing, is always better than the most beautiful lie. Because lies, no matter how well crafted, eventually collapse under their own weight. And when they do, they take everything built on top of them down too. The truth, on the other hand, is a foundation you can actually build on. Sarah and I have been married for 9 years now. We have a 7-year-old daughter who thinks her dad is the funniest person in the world, even though he tells terrible jokes and makes only slightly more than he did when all this started. We're not wealthy, we probably never will be, but we're secure in ways that have nothing to do with money. Our daughter knows that mommy and daddy had some hard times before she was born, that we had to learn how to talk to each other honestly, that love sometimes means doing difficult things. When she's older, we'll tell her the whole story, about the importance of truth, about the danger of trying to be someone you're not, about how the people who really love you will love you exactly as you are. I still work in insurance, though I've been promoted twice and my salary has improved. Sarah's marketing career has flourished and she makes more money than I do now, which she likes to tease me about. We drive sensible cars and take modest vacations and live within our means, really within our means this time, not the fantasy version I used to pretend we could afford. And every single day, I choose to tell Sarah the truth. About money, about work, about my fears and hopes and the random thoughts that pop into my head. Sometimes the truth is boring. What I had for lunch, how my day was, whether I remembered to pay the electric bill. Sometimes it's harder when I'm worried about money, when I'm feeling insecure, when I mess something up and want to minimize it. But I tell her anyway because I learned the hard way that a relationship built on lies isn't a relationship at all. It's a performance, and performances eventually end. Our marriage isn't perfect. We still fight about money sometimes, still struggle with trust issues, still have to work at communicating honestly with each other. But it's real. It's built on truth. And when our daughter asks us someday how we've stayed together for so long, we'll tell her that it's because we finally learned how to be ourselves with each other. The man Sarah fell in love with all those years ago, the millionaire investor with the mysterious portfolio and the expensive tastes, never existed. But the man she's married to now, the one who worries about the mortgage payment and drives a 10-year-old Honda and loves her more than anything in the world, is completely real. And that, it turns out, makes all the difference. Some people ask me if I regret telling that first lie, if I wish I could go back and do things differently. The honest answer is complicated. I regret the pain I caused Sarah, the years of anxiety I put us both through, the trust I broke, and had to spend years rebuilding. I regret the time we lost living in a fantasy instead of building something real. But I don't regret where we ended up. The marriage we have now, built on truth and trust and genuine love for who we really are, is better than anything I could have imagined back when I was pretending to be someone else. We know each other completely now. The good, the bad, the embarrassing, the beautiful. There are no more secrets between us, no more performances, no more elaborate fictions to maintain. When I told Sarah I loved her on that first night when I also told her I was a millionaire, I was telling her the truth about my feelings but lying about everything else. Now when I tell her I love her, which I do every single day, she knows exactly who she's hearing it from. She knows my flaws, my limitations, my fears, and my failures. And she loves me anyway. That's the thing about the truth that I never understood when I was busy constructing my elaborate lies. The truth is enough. The real you, with all your imperfections and limitations and embarrassing shortcomings, is enough for the people who really love you. You don't have to be rich or successful or impressive to be worthy of love. You just have to be honest. I kept that journal for almost 4 years, marking off each day of deception like a prisoner counting down a sentence. But I was wrong about what I was counting down to. I thought I was counting down to the day I'd be free from the lie. But what I was actually counting down to was the day I'd be free to tell the truth. And now, 5 years later, I keep a different kind of journal. Every night. Before bed, I write down one true thing I told Sarah that day. Sometimes it's something big. A worry about work, a dream for our future, a confession about something I messed up. Sometimes it's something small, what I really thought about the movie we watched, how I actually feel about the neighbors, whether I remembered to take out the trash. But every entry starts the same way. Today I told Sarah the truth about. Because the truth, I've learned, isn't just something you tell once to clear the air, it's something you choose every single day, in every single conversation with every single person you care about. It's the foundation of every real relationship, every genuine connection, every authentic moment of human intimacy. The lie I told Sarah about being a millionaire lasted 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days. The truth we've built together since then has lasted much longer, and with any luck, it will last the rest of our lives. And that, I think, is worth more than all the money in the world.